Woke coming from the early 1900s, that 1930s, that 1960s, from the writers to the musicians to the very colloquial way that that was used amongst Black folks is because we already know where are the sundown towns, right? Like, what sheriff in what town is acting like a psychopath at this particular year? How do you move around? You stay woke because your survival depends on it. When we saw the death of Mike Brown, it was the first time that I started observing the pushback to white folks finding out that Black people can congregate in a place like Black Twitter, for example, and get
Yeah.
rowdy, right? Now we're getting rowdy. Now we're planning protests. They're like, oh, these niggas, they're out here. They're out here.
They're not as peaceful as we want to believe they
Yeah.
are.
And they talking about Black Lives Matter. What?
Like, white lives matter,
Oh,
blue lives
all
matter. That was
lives
the
matter.
one that took my ass. I was just like, I ain't never met a blue motherfucker yet. Today, what are we talking about? The evolution of Black consciousness from civil rights to woke. Who do we get to have the conversation? This man hardly needs an introduction. If you've been outside, then you might have already seen him on Grapevine TV or Stranger Fruit. We're talking about the creator, producer, and writer who breaks all the rules and will push, kick, and pull culture forward. The one, the only, Donovan Thompson.
Hey.
I'm so excited to have you here. How you feeling? Like, give me like a top 3, just a sprinkle.
Okay, a top 3. I feel content. I feel
Okay.
content. I feel a little anxious, and then a little bit of the fuck.
Too anxious and the fuck. Those them's is feelings.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm wondering, like, how do you feel like those feelings are coming up with what we're gonna talk about today?
Oh my gosh, that's the fuck part right there. That's
Oh,
what it is.
okay.
Because, like, right before we got together, and we're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna speak to Dr. Donna. Let me get myself together." I was like, instead of doing that, let me just watch a little bit of news. And I was like,
That's how you wanted to prepare.
yeah, I was like, let me watch a little bit of news. Let me get into that energy because I knew that it would just get me sort of like stimulated. And what that
Mm.
did was that it brought in a little bit of the anxiety for sure. And then the fuck, obviously. Because we're going through a lot of the hearings and we're going to be talking about like this era that we're in and how that affects us as Black folks. So, yeah, for me, it's very like the fuck is going on. And even though we've had like the
Okay.
last couple of months to get used to what is going to be the Trump era presidency, second
Mm.
presidency, I still am not quite all the way ready for everything that's coming, especially because there's been so much bullshit that we have had to like hear. It's been the hearings, it's been about what he's gonna do, dictator the first day, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, I definitely feel a little bit of anxiety, but I would say the content part is it's just inside. It's a place of stability now for me. Like, I've kinda, like, come into this season feeling very much that even though there's a lot of bullshit going on, I'm going to, just remain steady and speak to myself nicely and just recover from what was a very tumultuous last couple of years. So I feel really good overall. That content part is big. Bigger than the anxiety.
I love that. I'm gonna ask you a question that don't have nothing to do with your content.
Okay.
Because we're about to have a real black ass conversation, right? So I wanted to know who's black, who counts as black, and who is the one that determines who is
Mm.
black within the context of this conversation and maybe even in the overall sort of overarching
Yeah, I
space.
love that question because we did an episode on Stranger Fruit about this idea of Blackness and biraciality and multiraciality and, like, who gets to be Black. I would say that if you identify as Black, whoever you are, I certainly do. If you come from melanated people, if you can trace yourself back to the diaspora, the continent of Africa. I mean, there are people on the continent of Africa right now who say that they're not Black. So I think it's really about how society defines Blackness, which has a lot to do with pigmentation, has a lot to do with where you come from. It has a lot to do with your kinky coils. It has a lot to do with how much melanin you have. But I do think a lot of it, you get to see that it's about culture. It's about
Mm.
how you in wherever you are, whether United States of America or if you're in Brazil, how Blackness sort of changes. And, I think, like, as a first generation Jamaican person, by way of Africa, right? Like just trying to figure out what Blackness means. It's been an evolution. And in
Mhm.
the privilege of being able to speak with a lot of Black people is that I think that a
Mm.
lot of Black people are just trying to figure it out, if I'm being honest with you. Like, what is Blackness? So if you speak with someone from the continent, they may not know they're Black until they bring their Black asses here. And then they got to deal with America and they figure out, oh, I'm Black, right? Despite what they may understand about their own orientation, about their nationality and where they come from. So for me, again, I think when you come to a place like America, you quickly find out that based on your phenotype, you're Black. And if you go someplace else, you may find out, well, here I'm just like everybody else. It doesn't mean so much. So it's up to the person, but it obviously is impacted by where you are, by your culture, by the way that colonization has impacted where you are in the world. But overall, like if your ass is sun kissed by the sun and your hair does a little curl, a little coil, a little wave,
This one right here. Ah.
exactly that right there, that's Black. So, for me, even though we have people who are not necessarily phenotypically Black, they don't appear Black, they're not melanated, who partake in Black culture, and sort of wanna play in the space, to me, like, that's not Blackness. That is very different than what it means to actually experience Blackness and walk that experience, and then also be able to kind of, like, claim that culturally.
So part of the reason I started there is because if we're gonna be talking about Black consciousness, we have to know, number one, who all even counts when we're having this conversation, who counts, right? And I would say, like, like even to like add into that a little bit, because I love the answer that you gave, right? Like you got to define for you what you are. Historically, we have not defined for ourselves what we are. White folk have determined who is what. And it must also be noted, because I know that some of the girlies are gonna try it. We're both two first gen people on this conversation about Blackness, and my Nigerianness is gonna make some people say I don't count.
Yeah,
Your Jamaicanness is gonna make some people say that you don't count.
yeah,
And yet, I believe we were both born in this country, which makes us very American. We grew up here, with the school here, did the things here.
everything.
But I would be remiss if I didn't also bring that piece into the conversation for a little bit of transparency about where both of us may be sitting within the context of this
Yeah.
conversation, and thus our and how that may change our understanding.
Yeah. I'm glad that you brought that up because this conversation has been one of the things that have really pissed me off, like, through the last decade of actually being in the work and going and talking to people all over the diaspora, from the continent, from, in Europe, people who are here as well, and other places as well. It's been a very annoying conversation, but to your point, no matter where you are in the diaspora, this maintains itself as a barrier. Where exactly are you from in the diaspora, and how does that inform said Blackness? And I think that it is a very healthy conversation to actually have. So it's not something that I necessarily stray away from, but sometimes when people are saying certain shit, it just pisses me off. Why? Because the difference between us as like Black folks who are visibly Black, like you can on the
Super.
on the continent of Africa or in the UK, that are Black, Brits and the Caribbean folks who tend to populate places like London, to the people here who are oftentimes enslaved, met up with a lot of people who came of their own volition, right? This experience that we're having is unlike a lot of other people's experiences, and I say for myself, it's kind of like step siblings fighting. You know, I don't know who you are. I mean, you don't even have to be step siblings to fight with your sibling, but there right? Like, but there is this element of like, you don't know me, right? Like, you don't know me. You may not have been there in my formative years. You don't have the same daddy. Whatever the case may be, the way that rivalry shows up, the way that misunderstanding and miscommunication come up. The most frustrating part of this for me, my mother coming here when she was around 12 years old to America. My mother is in her 60s. My mom, by all means, was raised and sort of like nurtured by Americanness. Her trauma, a lot
Mhm.
of it, American trauma, right? And so for me, it's very hard to separate myself from the Black American experience, but I really have learned to embrace what it means to have these differences, which don't have to be bad.
Mhm.
The way that I grew up and I saw like, Jamaicans do this thing called Podna and Susu, where, they bring money together and depending on what week it is, one person who has put and contributed their money gets the whole pot of money that week. And they get that money so that they can do whatever it is that they wanna do. And then I've
Mhm.
spoke to, like, other friends, like my Nigerian friends, and I've spoken to my Black American friends, and they have very similar things, right?
Because road stops. There's some pieces that get lost about what actually carried over, what actually is very similar,
Yes.
what actually is even the same, what got preserved, because it's not because we don't know it in the ways that white people teach us to know. We
Absolutely.
don't see those similarities as things we sometimes I think we see it as stolen culture as opposed to it is just part of our
Yes.
culture.
Yes.
So,
I love that you said that because there's a part in that process, first of all, you have to trust each other, right? You have to
mm,
actually trust that you're gonna get your draw when you're supposed to get your draw. And why? It's because of survival. It's familial, it's village-like. It's based on this idea that we know that we're what we have and we're trying to make it, so let's help each other. And so when I realized like that exists, or you talk about stews, we all got our stews, whether it's a gumbo, whether it's,
rum
a nice fish stew.
is always beautifully seasoned.
Exactly. The spices that they stole, we use them.
Because who goes somewhere to steal spices and doesn't use them? Ah,
It's the drugs. It's the drug. It's not
I'm like, is it crack? It must be
it's a
crack.
crack.
Because why? Just I
Exactly,
digress.
exactly.
So going forward from the well, who all is black, who all is white?
The people, that the sun don't really like too much,
Word.
the pigment has left the building. But I mean, ultimately, because I think that when it comes to blackness and the difference between blackness and whiteness is because of the way that you sort of describe, like a lot of blackness has been defined for us. What is blackness? Well, blackness is antithetical to whiteness, right? Whiteness is pure. Whiteness is Jesus, blue-eyed. White is straight here. White is as close to milk looking as you possibly can get. White is heroism. White is industry. White is, for us, violence, right? How do you sort of define what is whiteness? Again,
And justified violence at
and
that.
justify violence, a violence that enters the room before they enter the room, right? The violence that a mom or a dad, a black mother or a black father would have to tell their kids about when they have to deal with these systems, whether that's the policing system or the education system or when they're ready to get a corporate job. That is whiteness. Whiteness is the sheriff, the security guard, the head chief of the globe that sort of defines itself in a way that always moves the goalpost to make sure that everything sort of
Mm.
works in the favor of whiteness. Whiteness comes with supremacy sort of built into it and is antithetical to anything that sort of has any type of pigment or that has any type of difference. I think that even things like homophobia and sexism gets wrapped up into whiteness. Now, I know that these things can be perpetrated by people of color, by black people, absolutely 100%. But the rules that kind of like are understood to that needs to be followed by all of society. We all know whether you're in China right now, whether you're in Brazil, whether you are in the UK, whether you are here in the States, Mexico, you know that whiteness is your biggest antagonist as well as your highest standard at the same time.
I mean, you already giving it to us, right? So you've got so many different titles:
Mhm.
creator, musician, producer, and I know we are leaning heavy on that social activist right now.
Yeah.
And so, one of my questions to you is about like if Black folk are, as you said, sort of cast into this role of being the opposite of the purity of
Yeah.
whiteness and defined by white power signals. What then is Black consciousness?
When you talk about black consciousness, I think about wokeness. I think about how we've already sort of declared what this means for us. In this shared experience of needing to know how do you survive, where can you be, can you go visit? To this day, it's the same exact thing. There's this level of black consciousness that makes you ask before you go on vacation, is it safe for black people there? Are there other black people going to be there? You know what? Let me get on Google real fast and see what black people have said about Italy, or have said about Greece, or have said about Australia before I take my black ass over there and wind up getting treated like I would get treated at a club outside of LA. This is black consciousness. Black consciousness is a shared experience that I believe for those of us who have had enough time to understand what Black people have experienced, right,
Mm.
before us, what's the sort
Mhm.
of, like, immediate experience of Black people in our time, and how far are we away from freedom at any given moment? That is the consciousness that we have. It's that space of, like
How are we away from freedom at any given moment?
yeah, absolutely.
Like, that's like for me, that's really something to sit in, right? Because I'm just like, freedom or liberation, right? Like I get into a space of like what do we mean when we say the words that we say? Like freedom from oppression or liberation.
Mm,
And and part of the reason I ask is because freedom sounds like something that someone else must grant you. Liberation is something you grant yourself.
yeah.
So when you say you talking freedom or you talking
I think,
liberation?
first of all, I love the way that you put that, and I'm thinking both. And the reason
Both. That's for the people who don't know, that's BOAF.
yes, both,
Both. Both.
both of them, because I love how you define that. When you talk about freedom, that's what other people will allow you to do, and that's great. That's the
Mm.
definition, everybody. Moving forward, freedom and liberation, that's how you make that distinction. The freedom, what we're waiting, right? We're waiting with bated breath as Black people, as queer folks to just wait, like, what are they gonna do? What's the
Oh no.
moment? I mean, think like you as a Black woman, now knowing that you're in DC, God forbid you decide to move. If you decide to move to a certain place, you don't have control over your body, mama. That
I barely got control over it now. So I mean, I just like, cause her, yes, right. Like technically, even before all of this stuff, if I went to my doctor and said, "Hey, tubes,
Mhm,
let's tie them,"
mhm.
they're still gonna be like, "Oh, you're young. Oh, but your husband may want you. Your future husband will." Because I've had these conversations without this before when I was already thinking about going through this process. So it's like freedom, as Angela Davis said, is a
Yeah,
constant
it
struggle.
is.
My body belonged to me and didn't belong to
Yeah.
me. Anytime I put my body in a in a space outside of my home, suddenly it belongs to every Tom, Dick, and Harry who thinks this body out is fine and wants to partake.
Mhm.
So my body in space already don't feel too much like freedom because of the way that sexism works, because of the way misogynoir works.
Absolutely. And I think to like being when we talk about consciousness, I think to be at a space now around freedom where you can in your lifetime go from a place where we weren't really having serious
Mm.
conversations about rolling back abortion rights, and now it is the law of the land federally.
Land.
Right?
Yeah.
And so to know that it's changed within this small window, that is how freedom remains this sort of elusive thing that Black folks have been chasing and fighting for a long time. Now, the liberation part is what I think really goes into the wokeness aspect of what we're talking about because this inside out
Yeah, you use that word a couple times
that
now, because you know, yeah, you know, I got to go
uh
here because wokeness has been adopted, stolen,
yeah.
um, gentrified, and is being used in all manner of way now. And it's sort of and as a result, it has it's moved into like this sort of cartoonish villainy.
Yeah.
Cartoonish because usually within the a space of a cartoon, it also don't really make no sense.
Mhm.
It's like
Mhm. Yes.
you want to take the moon for the purpose of what?
Yes.
Again, digressing. Why do you believe the word woke was co-opted, gentrified, and villainized by the white powers that be in the space of media?
Absolutely. It's just that it was the easiest thing for them to be able to do. Woke coming from the early 1900s, that 1930s, that 1960s, from the writers to the musicians to the very colloquial way that that was used amongst Black folks is because we already know where are the sundown towns, right? Like, what sheriff in what town is acting like a psychopath at this particular year, right? Who just got elected in this? Who are the folks that are running whatever city? How do you move around? How you stay woke because your survival depends on it. When we saw the death of Mike Brown, right? It's Trayvon, it's kind of like when a lot of us got into this space, but by the time we got to Mike Brown, around that time when we got to 2015, 2016, 2017 was the first time that I started observing the pushback to white folks finding out that Black people can congregate in a place like Black Twitter, for example, and get
Yeah.
rowdy, right? Now we're getting rowdy, now we're planning protests. They're like, "Oh, these niggas, they're out here. They're out here."
They're not as peaceful as we want to believe they
Yeah,
are.
and they talking about Black Lives Matter. What?
Like, white lives matter,
Oh,
blue lives
all
matter. That
lives
was the
matter.
one that took my ass. I was just like, I ain't never met a blue motherfucker yet. I was like, this ain't Pandora, from Avatar.
It's giving Dory, but you know what? Them blue motherfucker, it don't matter. You could be blue, green, it doesn't matter. More rights and more respect than to the Black folks. Okay, that's on period. So it was this visceral reaction to Black folks speaking up for ourselves and organizing around that evoked that y'all shouldn't even be allowed to read and write type of shit with these people. And the thing is that because they did not have the ability, especially after the murder and lynching and suffocation um, parade, if you will, of George Floyd, what we saw was that we can't call them niggas right now. In fact, we have to play around, we have to play these games, give them a couple of dollars. What we can call them is woke. We can call them woke because we can see that they're calling themselves that. That's interesting. Let's villainize that because we can't use that hard ER right now because that is going to get you canceled. That is going to make sure that you're on somebody's list. That's going to get you banned for Twitter. Now, all of this stuff that has sort of happened in these last couple of years of Elon Musk, for example, purchasing X, which might as well be a major network, right? Or you see folks like Jeff Bezos getting another bazillion dollars added to his wealth. But as we started seeing these mediocre white men who were born into money get into a place where they can showcase this power and give the white sort of like disenfranchised, victimized public that has been cultivated as Black people have been speaking up for themselves, as it's been a white lash to that, as they've been sort of like feeding themselves and arming themselves rather, for what they would need to push back against a very needed moment when Black people are speaking up for themselves. They decided that woke would be the easiest way to kind of go in there because it's understood. When you think about wokeness, what do you think about? You think about Black people. Erykah Badu was giving it to you. It's in Kendrick Lamar, I believe, even says woke in his stuff. It's understood amongst Black folks. When we handed over a lot of our social justice language, it was hijacked. So it wasn't just woke. You would hear white people talking about, don't gaslight me. These are microaggressions. This is reverse racism.
That shit annoys the hell out of me. Just public service announcement to my people out here. As a therapist, y'all are using therapy language, and we are happy to see it used. We are happy that people are thinking mental health. However, when y'all use that thing like a bullet in your verbal gun, it defeats the purpose of what we are trying to do.
Absolutely. And then you turn that gun on Black folks who are speaking
Mm.
up for themselves and getting attention. This is about attention. Getting attention by way of a man losing his life, right? By way of a pandemic. So this one moment in time where we actually get together and we're speaking truth to power, it was just a very easy way for them to take woke, to villainize that word and use it as a replacement for nigga. That's it. That's it, point blank in the period. Anti-woke means simply anti-Black, which now gets wrapped up into anti-DEI, which is again
Oh, because now people are PI hires.
exactly. And again, this is all antithetical to whiteness. So when white people hear woke, believe me, they understand exactly what that's meant to say. They get it.
When it comes to language, especially the stuff that has been deemed like social media language or TikTok language, right? Like from that actually have origins in Black ballroom
Yes.
language or in Black queer lexicon or just Black female, Black
Yeah.
women's, spaces, right? And in that culture, like it's often extrapolated, then attributed to white folk and whatever it is else that I'm like, boxer braids? Like, come
Yeah,
on,
come
okay,
on.
right?
Come on.
And this may feel like a harsh ass question. How come Black people are okay with giving up our shit?
Because when you actually embrace this stay in your placeness, you
Mm.
know, the messaging is constantly coming through about our place and who we are and to stay in line. I mean, we're talking about from the way that Black folks cultivated music during the Motown era and had to sit
Mhm.
on their hands and watch white folks recreate their music and not receive a dime, and from when they recreate that music, not receive any credit, nothing.
Yeah, I got me a Cadillac.
Come
Cadillac car.
on, come on.
I need a Cadillac
Yeah,
car.
where is it? Where I couldn't buy me a Cadillac because these white people stole my shit and didn't give me no coins, which where's my
Word, cause and that's what has people step into the
What the
bedside.
come on, it's the same exact thing. I know a lot of TikTokers have spoken about this as well. A lot of Black TikTokers who come out, they do the dances, the phrases, the comedy sketches. They're chefing it up. They're giving you the best of themselves, and white folks are able to do a poor, t ashy, thin-lipped version of that and automatically are able to rise to fame, automatically are able to get revenue from these types of things. And so this hasn't changed. So when Black folks create amazing things and are so easily and always ready to give this away, it's because I believe of the messaging that we're told that it is automatically ours anyway. And not only that, it's this kind of like T.I., Iggy Azalea type of, it's just better on white. It's gonna be more successful if it's white. It's going to get higher returns if it's white. So what exactly are we fighting here? I think a part of that is that, and then another thing is, I'm really sad about this. We talked about the difference between freedom and the liberation being sort of like inside out. Another part of this is that, especially after we saw George Floyd again be murdered, is that to satisfy all of these Black people talking all of this shit, trying to tear down all of this industry and all of these systems, let's throw some money at them, right? Let's throw some money at them. Let's let canonize them. Let them just go into the stratosphere of popularity. Give them some stuff, and they're just going to shut the fuck up. We know that that's what works. Money works. And I think what we got to see as well is whether you're thinking about music and sort of like how music gets diluted and it gets pop, and then you have, like, all of a sudden these white artists hopping on these classic Black tracks. We're starting to see that in Afrobeats now. It's because of this association between them and this ultimate success, and at the same time, if we give you enough money, you'll do whatever the fuck that we say to do, and so I get a little bit concerned about the way that we hand out flyers to the barbecue to everybody to come and join us in our most intimate moments because ultimately we are looking for a means to an end. And so sometimes you can blame people if you're conscious, right? If you are looking for liberation, you tend to push back on this type of behavior of just sort of like giving all of our shit away. But if you're looking for freedom, the freedom of poverty, the freedom of this cyclical curse of not being able to get out the hood, then yeah, maybe you will turn over the best of whatever you got to some white people to help you get that get some access to freedom, maybe to the lake house. Mhm. Maybe to your Kardashian lookalike. I don't know what that may look like for you, but I do think that for different kinds of people, the way that they sort of use their Blackness to barter in the society where Blackness is actually very valuable, especially when it's not attached to a Black body. Yeah, it makes us play. We think that it's a game, when I think that in this process of sort of handing over the best, we wind up replacing that with something
Mhm.
else, where now ultimately, if you really look at what that is, I think it's sort of this idea of trading bodies for bullets. Which we succumb to during the slave trade, right? This idea of, like, falling victim to the poison of the dollar when people dangle that, and I think that has a lot to do with it, the way that we are oriented as less than and how we concede, and then also how we're looking for freedom, and so what does that make us do with our Blackness?
I mean, damn. That's really just something to like to sit in, right? Because like even part of the reason like I asked you about like our comfort with giving the things away is because it's like we're saying that shit ain't mad at us anyway. You could go ahead and take our light work.
Yes.
Except
Yeah.
it feels also like giving up the legacy. I mean, as you said, woke ain't new.
Mhm.
Woke was renewed.
Mhm.
Right? It became a cultural phenomena in today's time where technology is the way that technology.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of all the Black language over time that has been given away, right? And I don't consider it English. I don't consider it white American
Right,
English,
right.
right? This book here by April Baker Bell,
Mhm.
linguistic justice.
Yes.
She talks specifically about AAVE as a language,
It is.
as literally its own language. And so I find myself alarmed at what feels like giving away Black language
Yeah.
to be reused, repurposed, extrapolated of all meaning, and just like there's a throw our hands up, we don't want that shit
Yeah.
backness. Sometimes I find it distressing because we already took back, such ugly words of hate against us. But then the ones that keep us knowing that, hey, stay woke. These people are trying to play in your daggone face.
Mm. Mm.
There's a willingness to just say, okay, bye. I'm one for making people feel stupid in the moment. That's the Scorpio in
Mm.
me. I'm all for it.
Mhm.
Like, I'm for calling people out and making it awkward.
Yes.
And I don't know that we're doing enough of making it awkward while saying, keep your hands off my shit.
Yes. Yes.
Like that song, Stay Woke, like it comes to mind.
Yes.
And I'm just like, well, how would you say, what has music's impact been for Black people um, as we work on, I guess, resistance to, I'm gonna call it the bullshit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like as we are trying to do that, right? Like, is it a tool for social change or is it just entertainment?
Oh my god.
Or does it depend?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, first of all, music is my first passion, my first love. I love music. Music is outside of media and sort of like what you see, what you hear, like literally is programming everything about us. And, I think like folks like us were privileged, millennials, we were able to grow up at a time where we heard some ratchet shit, but this is coming off the heels when people were singing you a love song, they were using a whole bunch of innuendo. You know what I mean? You had to figure that out.
Yes, they were.
The music was cultivated in an artful way. And that art is what I'm afraid that we are seeing the sort of like reduction of Black art because a part of the art comes with perspective. And so when you're thinking about whether this is like gang related art that comes out, at least it's honest. If
Yeah.
it's music about cheating on your girlfriend, at least that's maybe honest for you. You're finding a way to just like talk about how you creep. You know what I'm saying? Like at least there was something about these songs that created a way for you to sort of like identify, is this for an adult? Is this for a child? I think we're in a
Mm.
place now where there's whether you're talking about adult or a child, or you're talking for Black or white, or you're talking about culture, is for everybody. Is this who is this for? We're in a place where I think that it's all very, very muddy, and it can't be used for social change in this type of an environment because the way that we sort of look at that music is not the way that we looked at music when it was Nina Simone or Marvin Gaye or Michael Jackson saying "We Are the World." These were huge moments. There were huge video premieres. They were able to raise a lot of money to help people, et cetera, at those times.
Yeah.
And during the Civil Rights Act, obviously the soundtrack that accompanied this movement, whether we're talking about gospel music in the church, which we're disconnected from now as a generation, or whether you're talking about, people in the actual music, whether that's like, R&B music or whether that's soul music, it crossed over. So they were talking about the pain of being a Black person. Stranger Fruit, the company that we have is based off of, Billie Holiday's song, Nina Simone's song about bodies, Black bodies hanging from trees.
Strange
George
fruit.
Floyd was just murdered. It's the same shit. But is there something like Strange Fruit? Is there a song like Strange Fruit out now to sort of like commemorate this moment? Yeah, there are moments where people are doing something creative and it may last for a day or so, but people aren't necessarily investing in that type of music. And they're definitely not invested in the type of people who would give us that kind of music. And I think when we talk about the invitation to the barbecue, this is a really major part of this conversation when we talk about Black music. We have been so willing to abandon the roots of our music and giving it away. So when people talk about who is the best-selling soul singer and they can start shouting out Sam Smith or Adele or Amy Winehouse and move Beyonce down that list or move down Jasmine Sullivan down that list to make room for them, this is our doing. A part of this is, yes, it's a part of freedom. It's a part of like the white supremacist patriarchal society that we live in that will relegate Beyonce to being an R&B singer, but then at the same time canonize somebody like Adele who wishes if she could sing like a Beyonce. And so when we sort of like say that's fine, let's get our own Iggy Azaleas, let's get our Justin Biebers, let's give it to Justin Timberlake, let's give them the best of us. Let's put Ed Sheeran on this Afrobeat song, let's put Selena Gomez on this Afrobeat song. At the same time, these people are able to say like this black audience is worth so much. It's credibility. Come on, Miley Cyrus, right? It's a level as you get to this audience. Come on, Kim Kardashian. The black audience is so valuable. But the way that we interpret our own value is completely bastardized. Our
Mm.
value suddenly it just increases once it has a white face, and we have to understand that we've been a part of that. I remember we did some episodes back in the day, like on the Grapevine, we did it on Stranger Fruit too, just talking about it. Is R&B dead? What R&B
Mhm.
was. Now, listen, I'm also gonna say we're lucky. We have some girls coming up, a lot of these women that are coming up who I absolutely love and adore, but they can't sing. They can't sing really well like what we grew up with, right? But if you go on TikTok right now and look at all of the white people and the white vocalists who have been studying Whitney Houston, who have been studying Beyonce, who've been studying Aretha Franklin, who've been studying Brandy, who've been studying gospel singers so that they can regurgitate our shit back to us in a way that our singers today can't because they've abandoned it. That is shameful because, again, it's tethered to the experience. It's tethered to that history of the Black church and kinda like, even though with its toxicity, also passed along that we all we got. We're missing a lot of that energy until the stories are getting lost. So at the same time as white folks are guarding their shit and saying, "No, Beyonce, I don't care how blonde that hair is, I don't care how light that skin is. You are still woke. And if you forgot what that means, you're still a nigga." As for you, as for us, as we're aspiring to enter these spaces, we give white people the easy access. And so a part of that is the Negro self-check of we can't make these people uncomfortable. And I think through all of this process, we're not too excellent. We're not great anymore. You know, a lot of artists, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's like Lucky Day. There are people who can like really, really sing well. There's Victoria Monet who has a great technical and artist type of approach to her things where it's like, this is an artist. You ain't giving us, you know, the vocals like that, but you are giving us something beautiful that we can really appreciate. So I'm like a huge fan of hers, for example. But I'm looking as much as I know I get it from my mama and we fly. And thank you, Victoria. Thank you for that anthem. We appreciate you. God bless you. It's also that people are dying. There's also stuff going on in the Congo, this in Sudan. There are things that are happening right now in America right now to black folks, and we're not elevating those stories. And because of that, and because of the artists that we canonize, a la Drake and, you know, the myriad of people, all of the littles, there's a whole bunch of little people running around, little this, little that, little they all a mess. They all together, it's a lot of foolishness, not a little, but a lot of foolishness that they're able to kind of like put into the space. And because of that, because of the lack of voices that we hear that give us something else, I think it's not a time where we hear people leveraging the music to activate people. But, you know, while you have people who may have a good look and may have like a good rollout and may have good imagery, what they're saying ain't shit. So we need to close that gap. So that was a very, very long answer to essentially say that I think that in many other ways, like we can talk about activism as well. I think we've lost our footing in this
Mm.
moment because we've been so lucky to inherit the civil rights movement, the impact of the civil rights movement, and we've been spoiled for generations, at least 1 or 2 generations, which with enough time to make us feel like we're beyond our experience, we're beyond our ancestors' experiences, and we
Mm.
cannot identify that now's a time to go back to that moment where we would invoke our ancestors to talk about these things that are happening and hoping that we would have power to
Mm.
change people's minds, power to impact the ethos. And I think we've lost that connection.
One of the things that sort of like comes to me from that answer is that we're looking for financial freedom at the cost of everything else.
Yes.
That we move toward looking specifically for financial freedom and maybe some social
Yeah.
benefits, especially the ones that come with financial freedom, that liberation has stopped being on the brain. So you sell out
Yeah.
liberation so that in the moment you can have money.
Yes.
And if we're gonna have that conversation, then we have to recognize that there are very few people in the mainstream
Mhm, mhm.
who are looking for our liberation either.
Have all
And when I say very few, I want the girlies to know, yes, I do mean your
yeah.
fave. You know exactly who the fuck
Yes.
I'm talking. Not finna say no names. Yes, your fave is probably looking more about the pocket than about the liberation.
Absolutely.
Some of the way that, shit move don't actually make sense if we're talking about our collective consciousness and our collective
Yeah.
liberation. Especially given that it seems that some of us are also wanting to leave other people in chains as long as we can be free. And there is no freedom for any of us if one of us is still
In
in enslavement.
chains. Yes, absolutely.
Knowing that we are divided in that some of us want freedom, mostly financial, and some of us want liberation, which will not necessarily come with financial benefits, not on the way,
Yeah,
not on the way.
yeah.
Where does Black desire stand where it comes to this idea of our consciousness, freedom, and liberation?